right. Now, given that we're setting the context for our next panel discussion, where India has all the ingredients to emerge as a global innovation hub. There's abundant STEM talent, world-class educational institutions such as this, a vast home market, and the third largest startup ecosystem. With leading companies in IT, auto components, and petrochemicals making their mark, we're also home to over 1,500 global capacity centers, driving innovation and quality solutions worldwide. Technologies like AI and big data are clearly reshaping industries at a global scale. Today, we are privileged to hear from a distinguished panel of guests who are from industry, academia, and of course, the technological domain, and they'll be sharing their thoughts on how India can leverage these strengths to further accelerate innovation. Let's welcome on stage, ladies and gentlemen, our moderator, Professor Anu Narsimhan. Her academic and practical insights will be guiding the conversation in the critical role for entrepreneurial capital. Dr. Ajay Sethi is a startup advisor at Open Science Stack, and he's got 2 decades of experience in the startup space, with the first decade focused on entrepreneurship and the second on advising and mentoring startups. He's advised over 150. Mr. Rakesh Pundir is currently serving as the Joint President and Head Strategy at Grasim P&F, as well as Aditya Birla Group, and has been part of the group for over 2 decades, and operational roles include the Chairman's Office. Can we please have him on stage? As a leader, he spearheaded the creation and execution of several projects. We also have with us Mr. Makoto Kamiya, the CEO of OpenPath Inc., a business advisor to several large companies like Toyota, Panasonic, and more. He was earlier associated with Nissan, Mitsubishi, and an ex-associate professor of entrepreneurship and deep tech producer ecosystem at the University of Sudaka, Japan. A big thank you for all of you for being here, and I would request you to take forward the panel discussion.
It's great to be here when SINE is celebrating 20 years, and wonderful to see the felicitations in the morning. A line that the director said stays with me, and he spoke about how IIT combines the science of technology and we are moving into the engineering of technology, in a sense spanning the gamut from research into translational research into commercialization. So it was something that he said in the morning and it stayed with me. I'd like to start with that. All 3 of my panelists are very well versed in the innovation, entrepreneurship, commercialization space. Our topic is to explore how entrepreneurial capital can further economic development. Yeah? So the first question is really, what is entrepreneurial capital? And a quick answer to that I can give you is it's the combination of human capital, of financial capital, and networks, and so on. So my first question to all my panelists will be, while they have been introduced, I'd like you to say a couple of lines into how you are on the ecosystem and which parts of this entrepreneurial capital or human capital would you like to focus upon. So Rakesh, we can start with you.
Thank you, Anu. I think it's a privilege to be on this panel with Mac, Ajay, and with your able hands steering the conversation. I think on the ability of entrepreneurship to further economic development, I think this is no secret that if you all read about, what is the contribution of Silicon Valley to the overall, let's say, 20, $30 trillion economy of US, or let's say, we've heard case studies about MITI in Japan, or the post-World War second rise of Austria, or the West Germany. All that was possible, because ultimately they were channelizing, government was furthering in a particular way. So I think that's what the economic development is. Cut to India, I think I was just thinking about this, topic when this was given a few days earlier by Saji. Thank you, Saji, for that. And I thought that in case of India, what's happening is that there is a large job crisis at hand, which gets played out into, not only politics, but, the conversation at various homes, whether it's placement for students or things like that. So I think for us, I think the job creation to my mind is an important attribute, while the valuations and the technology will come, but in time it will lead to more job creation. Uh, so I think that's what my lens for this particular entrepreneurship ability is, the mindset. I had the opportunity to work with few smaller companies in telecom when I was in operating role, and in my current role I'm in a textile value chain. I worked with few smaller companies in commercializing a product, and the summary was that if the smaller company, the so-called entrepreneur, if he's able to pivot at the right point in time, and he's your face to where the opportunity lies, if he can pivot at the right point in time, the original problem area that he started with, the final solution may be different. It could be a phase-wise solution, but he's successful. So that's why I regard my lens for entrepreneurship is mindset.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great. Makoto, I'm going to reintroduce you because I saw people coming in, and it's important that. So Makoto Kaima is from Japan. He's an associate professor of entrepreneurship at the University of Tsukuba. He's also the CEO of OpenPath. I want you to expand upon what I'm going to say next, which is that he works with academics and with corporates such that lab gets to market. Have I said that right? And can you say a little more about what you do in this space?
So thank you for introducing myself, Professor Anu. So hello everyone, I'm Makoto Kamiya, call me Mac from Japan. So I'm honored to be here as the producer of startups and the ecosystem, representing Japan. So thank you for your question. Well, I think, entrepreneurial capital is quite important. I think entrepreneurship should be for everyone. So, not only for someone who plan to make startups, but also just, everyone. So for example, like Rakesh said, 70 years ago, after World War II, Japan got, lost everything. Japan got nothing, in Tokyo. If you went to Tokyo back then, 70 years ago, nothing, just flat ground. Say no goods, no foods, and no jobs. So what did we do? What we did was just, encouraging our entrepreneurship. We boosted up some companies such as Toyota, Sony, Panasonic, Honda, and so on. Those companies made Japan. So entrepreneurial capital make country, society, and your life. But sadly, these days in Japan, many people lose entrepreneurship. They just work for company, that's it. After, say, rapid economic growth, they lose entrepreneurship. So currently, I quit university this August, and I create my company. Then I consult many big Japanese companies such as Toyota, Panasonic, and then I give them entrepreneurial program. I wake up, I try to wake them up, their entrepreneurial mindset. So I think mindset comes first, especially in Japan. After rapid economic growth, we have to wake up again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's a wake up to all of us here. Ajay Sethi, ID Bombay, BTech, we were together here 35 years ago. Ajay introduces himself as a venture builder and not as a venture evaluator. So he's not a VC who's sitting and seeing that 1 minute pitch, but after somebody has decided to invest, he helps them create and build. He himself has done a couple of startups, studies, researches, and writes about entrepreneurship, and currently is advising us at the Desai City School of Entrepreneurship and also Art Park at IISc. So he's rooted in the ecosystem that is entrepreneurship. Ajay, the question for you is your lens, and I hope it's not the same one, or even if it is, take a different one. So yeah.
No, thank you, Anu. So my lens is actually more rooted in practice because last 20 years I've been in the startup ecosystem. First 10 years I did 2 startups. Both, first one I co-founded, second one I joined at the seed stage. Both eventually raised VC capital, one failed, one succeeded, got sold for $200 million. 2013, around 10, 11 years ago, I joined a VC firm called Excel, which is one of the larger VC firms and actually one of the most successful one with companies like Flipkart, Swiggy, Urban Company, and actually few very good IIT Bombay alumni companies, Browser Stack, Bizongo, a few more, Vedantu actually. So whole bunch of portfolio. So in 2015, when we had our 25th Silver Jubilee reunion, is when I think Anu, led by Anu and some other people, we said, let's try to democratize doing startups in institutes like IIT. And that was when I got pulled back into the IT ecosystem and into the education ecosystem. We started a program called IDS program, which actually has run very well. Anu is the head of that. 2019 is when I got pulled into ISC because ISC was starting a AI and robotics TIH, Technology Innovation Hub. And basically, I was an advisor to them. But more importantly, what happened was, as part of Axel, Axel has funded around 250 companies, and I got an opportunity to work with more than 150 such startups. Wow. At the early stage, including Swiggy's and the Vedantus and the Urban companies, which have now scaled up, and some have gone IPO and some are in the process. I learned through that a lot of the frameworks that are out there are not as good as they should be, because even after 30 years of startups being done across the world, 95% of startups still fail. So clearly something is wrong, right? And we need to figure out a way to fix it. So my angle into that is to understand what is causing those failures and how can we help startups to succeed.
Good. Thank you. Mac, we're going to start with you, since you said this about Japan and the Tokyo example is very poignant. So the question and the arguments about whether entrepreneurs are made or they are born, let's not discuss that question at all. Let's suffice to say that entrepreneurs can be made. And therefore the question is, what kind of traits have you seen in successful entrepreneurs? Which of them are not so easy to train? And any experience that you have in training entrepreneurs on mindset. So a bunch of questions, but in this area of how do we make entrepreneurs? That's the question for you.
Oh, thank you for a good question. That's very good question, I think. I think, like I said earlier, everyone is entrepreneurs. Like, you don't need to make like huge startups, unicorns. But you live and you die someday. You have to go your own way. That's why I named my company Open Path. So I think, entrepreneurship for everyone around the world. So, but you have to wake up as entrepreneurs, even if you were born as entrepreneurs, which means you have to meet with good entrepreneurs. So I was lucky because I was successor of Masayoshi Son, CEO of SoftBank Group. That I've talked with him, say, more than 15 years.
Wow.
Then he's truly entrepreneur, as you know. Yeah. Then I consult him quarterly as his successor, and then my proposal, has been, joined inside of SoftBank Group. So I learned a lot. I talk to him a lot. So 2 points: you have entrepreneurial mindset when you were born, but you have to meet with the entrepreneur, and then you need a dialogue with those people. Then you're kind of expired. You wake up. So I think those 2 points.
No, thank you, Rakesh. Entrepreneurial traits, and feel free to borrow from intrapreneurs in large organizations also. So what makes them different? And then we'll try answering how can we build that trait. So can we identify a couple of them?
I think Mac talked talked about his experiences, and we were chatting before we
Yeah.
came up on
Yeah.
the stage as well. And for me, luckily I've been in roles in Aditya Birla Group, which were sort of a entrepreneurs,
yeah.
entrepreneurs in the sense of new business ventures, and the group has done quite a bit. Today we are $100 billion group, but when I joined the group at that point in time, instantly from School of Management, IIT Bombay, we were $4-5 billion group, and everything project that would come, a new team would be formed, and questions would be asked that who wants to be on that team, and
And how many hands would go up? Many or?
I think, to my surprise, people would always say that this is my strength, this is a new project,
I don't want to do it.
I don't want to do it.
Ah,
Birla is in manufacturing, so telecom is coming up in 1997. Who wants to go? No, but telecom,
we don't know.
we don't know. So all the telecom people were hired, for example, from outside.
It's so sad.
And in fact, another learning of mine was, fortunately, after 7-8 years, I myself went to telecoms. And I realized that at the end of the day, in terms of, what are the skills that you bring? Basically, the skills you bring is faster learning. In whatever assignment you are there, as an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur, ultimately, if you can do fast learning and a focused learning, because these skills and knowledge is available across the world, and especially the large companies can buy it also. But I think even the startups, if they have the right networks, if they have the right connections, I think the knowledge can be sought through friendships, through networks, sometimes through, I would say, if the knowledge is good, why not even part your stake
Partner.
in the company? So I think knowledge is available. I think you have to be resourceful to get it either ways. So I think that's the point. I think to be successful, that's what I say, that ultimately you have to be very versatile in getting the resources for yourself.
Ajay, when you have seen entrepreneurs not do well, are there any learnings from that? So I'm trying to build to what needs to be taught. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So I think so. First we need to first define what makes entrepreneurs succeed,
Sure.
and then we can say what
Sure.
makes them fail, right? And what traits are needed. So typically, to build a good startup, entrepreneurs need to focus on three different things. First is what's known as user centricity. So you need to know who your users are, what their pain points are, what are you solving, who are you solving for, what are you solving for, number one. Number two is you have to build something to, deliver value to them. So that's the second one, which is product centricity. You have to be able to build a product. Recently one of the ex-CEOs of one of the large Indian companies said that India does not need to make foundation models. We just need to make applications. I call that a system integrator mindset, which is different from an entrepreneurial builder mindset. So I think we need to, second skill is building. Ability to build products and moving away from the system integrator thinking. Number three is business sense, because end of the day, you're making a business. So you got to figure out where the money is and how will you make the money, how will you make a profitable company. So those are the three drivers of a successful business. Now, when we look at what is the reason from a failures, right? What is it that causes startups not to succeed? It is actually failures in one of the three, right? The underlying thing of all of this is learnability. I think you mentioned also in Rakesh. So learnability is ability to learn and switch, to understand what the market is telling you and change according to that. So learnability in my mind is the key, success trait or entrepreneurial trait that is required. And I've seen companies like Urban Company, Swiggy, they start small, they think of something. If you take an Urban Company, started with a very different product. They wanted to build a marketplace. It was not working out. All other companies in that space have died. None survived. The only reason Urban Company succeeded was they realized that unless they take ownership of delivering the good quality service, they will not succeed. So they actually had to pivot. And that is what made them succeed. So learnability, number one. Number two, grit, because it's a 10-year journey. It does not happen overnight. You've got to be there. And typically entrepreneurs are able to see things which others are not able to see. So, but because you can see, or at least you have a hope that your vision is right, you got to stay true to that. So that grit and determination is very, very important. And the third thing, because I think it's an academic institution and people are exposed to research is open-ended. Yeah. Unlike that, entrepreneurship has constraints. You have to work with 3 constraints, the same 3 constraints. You got to basically figure out who your users are. Are there users in the market or not? Because if you're building a product for which users don't exist, you will not succeed. Number 2, can you actually build a product? Is technology ready for you to build a product? If not, then it won't happen. Third, is the market ready? If the market is not large enough, you might have the best idea, you will not succeed. So eventually the market wins. So you got to honor the 3. So living with constraints, working with constraints is very, very important. So those are 3 factors in my mind.
One quick follow-up on entrepreneurial traits. Keep hearing that the one thing that differentiates between entrepreneurs who are, let's say, born versus those who are not is risk-taking ability. Any comment from, and all of you, anything on risk-taking? Is that something that can be imbibed, even if it can't be taught? Can it be imbibed? Can it be learned? What is the role that, let's say, an ecosystem, whether it's SINE, whether it's all of IIT, how can we, should we celebrate getting D grades in our, how do we celebrate not doing well? So, open-ended, yeah. Any of you, in any sequence. Go ahead. As bizarre, the better the answer.
No, I can give a practical example.
Go ahead.
In about 2010 or something, 2010, 11, when I was in telecoms operations, and this 2G to 3G, this time was coming, and then obviously we knew, it's not rocket science that what is happening in US will happen here after a couple of years. So we knew 4G will also come. So we were building the transport networks, and there was a small company which came to my team, and they said that we are a Chennai-based company. I'll give the name later, but
sure.
And then we supply equipments in Africa to the larger, the North European companies like Ericsson and Nokia. Why don't you look at us? And we were finalizing a couple of $100 million contract between the traditional vendors, and we obviously had some Chinese also. Chinese became very aggressive in between, and the whole of Bharat Sanchar was run by Chinese, in fact, at one point in time. So, long story short, but what I did was that when I met the CTO and the Chief Executive Officer, I got very excited looking at the people, and I said that if it's already working in Africa, and who must be maintaining those equipments, it must be robust. Because Africa, we knew how Bharti is running. So I knew some bit about Bharti, the challenges Bharti is facing. So we gave a small contract, couple of percentage point out of our 100%. That company is actually Tejas Networks today. And the only thing that happened, my bosses told me that, you are giving to untested company. So why are you taking this risk? What is a couple of percentage point? How does it matter? I said, sir, precisely because it's a couple of percentage points. So if they fail, we will just swap them over a couple of months. So it'll take some hard work for my team. So I told my bosses this, but I told the vendor that I have given you contract. Now it's my reputation. I will monitor you, and I will do more review for this 2% than I do for 98%.
My takeaway from that is.
So I think risk taking is also what efforts you put in there.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
But one takeaway for me is also how can we get our startups or how can we get our corporates to do the 2%? Is there something actively that we can do and prospect with companies that they should buy from our startups, even if it is 2% of a large or a 4% or whatever? So thank you. Mac, risk-taking? Any quick learnings? Otherwise, I'll move to my next question. But go ahead on risk-taking. Anything that you have about people? How do they imbibe risk-taking? If you have nothing to lose, then you can take risk. But is that the only way, or there are other ways that you learn risk? Yeah.
Yes, regarding risk-taking, as I said earlier, Japanese people go asleep under rapid economic growth. They just work for companies. That's it. They have no, passion. So, I work under the government, Ministry of Economic, Trade and Industry. Then I find futures of young future CEOs, say 100 future CEOs in a year, then, I give them, say, 30,000 US dollars a year. Then I ask them, fail fast,
Fail fast.
do something. Then if you think it's risk, actually not risk. The biggest risk is not taking the risk,
Oh.
opportunity loss. So in a year, we talk to them, how was it? They say, no risk. I thought it was bigger risk, but no risk. No action is huge risk. That's what they understand. So they have to try very small. They have to know that what you're thinking about risk is not risk.
Thank you. Santosh, looking directly at you, because you said in the morning in your opening comment that 80% of SINE incubators have done well. And is that a reflection on have we not risked enough? And so we'll work on that, but it's a nice thought to share. Ajay, flipping area completely. Yeah. We spoke of people, and I'm now going to move to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And you've been involved in a few of them. So the question is, and wonderful stories of SINE that we've heard, waiting to hear some more over the next 24 hours. But what can the ecosystem do to support, and take a minute and walk through what you think is the ecosystem? So open canvas.
All right. So I think before the startups become startups, there is a pre-incubation stage, and before that there is a research stage, right? So I think at some level we need to support entrepreneurs who are not yet an entrepreneur to make to the next step from a research to pre-incubation to incubation, right? So there are these different steps. So I think an ecosystem that is evolving actually in the last 5-7 years, unfortunately it's that recent, is actually taking care of all these things. So if you look at in the last decade or so, we have had 500 plus Atal tinkering missions.
Labs. Yeah.
Right. There are 600 plus incubation centers, AIM.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's been accepted that it needs to be supported at a larger scale. The challenge actually, despite all of this, there are two challenges. Number one, it is right now, perhaps correctly or maybe because it's the stage, it is all focused on capacity building. It is not, all the metrics are capacity building. How many have we launched? How much money have we dispersed? It's not on capability building. It's not on success. So I think there's one challenge that we are right now facing. The other one is actually of the people themselves who are manning or who are supporting, who are in charge of that. And I think within, because we are here at IIT, I think the faculty members typically are the first mentors for the deep tech startups, because the ideas come from research labs and somehow they need to get supported. And I think therefore it becomes very important to ensure that the faculty members are entrepreneurially exposed to what it takes to succeed, right? So therefore we need to go back to that and say, okay, how can we make sure that the faculty members are more entrepreneurially savvy, right? So that's where I look at the ecosystem.
Okay.
And there I think some of the initiatives, I think SINE has recently started called the Titanium program, supported by two of our alumni, Rajesh and Ramesh. So I think that's a kind of initiative that needs to happen. I think it's one of the first in kind in India. But I think basically the idea is for Mac and Rakesh, the idea is that the faculty members who have, and for the audience also of course, so the faculty members who have good research in their lab, which they think can be commercialized, there should be a systematic way to help them find the right team, find the right market, find the early customers, so that they can actually move from research to pre-incubation to startup. So I think that's what, right? So the way I look at it, it's one of the learnings over the 5 years working with ISC and IIT is, and I say it like this, because Anu, you're from marketing, so it was said before that marketing's so important that it should not be left to marketing departments. I say that entrepreneurship is so important that it should not be left only to e-centers and e-cells. I think we need all faculty members to get involved, all mentors to get involved, and it needs to become broad-based. Right now it is an silo somewhere sitting, right? So
No,
I think we
that's
need to
fair.
broad-based it.
Right. Mac, can you take exactly from there and talk about the from your university experience and your experience with deep tech startups, what makes our ecosystem get more supportive of a research and a deep tech startup? So,
Yes, I think you have to design ecosystem that has various stakeholders, not only faculties but also VCs, young future CEOs. So I've worked on Tsukuba Silicon Valley project for these 3 years, then gaining huge funding from the government. Then, in Japan, technical capabilities and the quality of research and development are very high. And many innovative technologies have emerged in fields such as material science, robotics, and electronics. But sadly, almost all of them don't go to the market, just research. So what I did was bringing young PhD students who love science and interested in business. They are matched with faculty members. Yeah,
yeah, that's what you were talking
that's
about.
right. That's right. We made a bunch of deep tech. They also, what I did was collaboration, like mechanisms between industry and academia. So, in Japan, there are many, huge industries such as Sony, Panasonic. I asked them to listen to, deep tech presentation. Then they made a contract with startups. Then those startups made huge variation.
Nice.
So ecosystem has various stakeholders.
Nice. I'm going to now put Rakesh you on the spot, and moving from ecosystem, we included finance in the ecosystem. So what we feel and what we all know is that technology startups need patient capital. Yeah, so not the whatever 5-year returns or 7-year returns. Yeah. In your experience, and you've worked with a group that has invested in both in terms of longevity in time and in the depth of the. So, do you see large corporates, Bag just described, which is, or let's just talk about how to get patient capital. I think that's whether it comes from a large conglomerate or it comes from a VC, how can we inculcate the thought of patient capital with a bunch of people who are called venture capitalists or venture they are good with, but patience they are not necessarily good with. So,
I don't know whether I can answer that question on
No, but go
patient
ahead.
capital or not, but I can answer
Go ahead.
answer the collaboration between industry and
Yes, let's
the
start from there. Yeah.
HEIs. For example, see to kill the patient capital, you can have fund of funds and you can have various structures. So I think some experts can talk about that. But let's say talk about my industry where I am in Aditya Birla Group. We have a full R&D center in Taloja. And I am in a business called Viscose. And we've been making this viscose since 1948.
I hope new viscose.
Of course, now we are in the third generation.
Okay.
So what we've done is that in the absence of any R&D support system in the country, and there was only one competitor of ours in Europe, which had a superior R&D setup available to them, or whatever the Northern European system of cellulosic research was also available to them. So, in Europe, there are various countries that have strength in different areas of the material science or cellulose or, various special chemistry and things like that. So, Grasim Industries has 1948. Today, we have the most advanced lyocell fiber we've produced, and we are selling it now. We are selling 40,000 ton in the country. And that is, the greenest fiber, which is used in textiles. But could we have done it earlier? If I really think about it, if there would be collaboration between the academia and the industry, then it should be possible to short circuit this development process. Otherwise, what has happened, our engineers and our scientists in our R&D labs, who are also managers, they don't have access to the latest research that is going on. They also get assessed on a yearly KPIs. and then there is, many other things happen in a corporate, the way you handle budgets, the way you handle things. So I think to my mind, I think now corporate like us, Aditya Birla Group, we've got a full R&D center. I don't know how many of here are aware of this, but we've got hundreds of scientists working in Taloja Center. There are many people who have gone from IIT Bombay itself. Some of my batchmates are there, some of my seniors are there. And they are doing really application-wise research on the products and process in chemical industry for our product. And similarly, we do for others. So I think in terms of HEI, I think can the HEI make that leap? Can the MTech projects and the PhD projects really get aligned to the industry? Of course, now the IP protection is also there. So it's not as if the Grasim is going to grab someone's patent. So I think those protections can be built in. But I think time is there now to align. Because now the industry is also spending enough money on the research. I think what we need is that some sort of a collaboration where the interest of the HEIs, higher education institutes, is protected, and the industry also gets benefits out of that. So that's my point of view.
No, this is music, because we have always been describing translational research as taking what we have and going to industry, but you are describing the other way around, which is looking at, not just looking at, collaborating with companies to figure what is it that they need and develop to that need. So appreciate that. Ajay, I'll come back. I'm asking you about the patient capital question. And it can be from, have you seen it get a little more patient in the 30 years that it's been around? And what do you think can accelerate that process? Yeah.
Sure. So I think there are two kinds of capital, right? First of all, for the startups, number one is the risk capital, which is the equity capital. And number two, I call it revenue capital, right? Which is the money you make from your customers, right? And I think we need to look at both, because revenue capital is what gets the startups going. And actually, if you look at US market and the technical prowess of US, the underlying thing there is not VCs, is this program called, a combination called SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research, and STTR, which is Small Business Technology Transfer Research, I think. It's around $4 billion, which is what government of, it's called America Seed Fund, which is what government gives money to startups. It's a non-dilutive, so no equity. But it is done because there is a defense or a space company which has a requirement, puts it out. Startups bid for it. If they meet certain criteria, they get the money. They have to deliver back. If they meet the specs that they wanted, they get the contract and they make money. That's revenue capital. That's revenue capital, because it's non-dilutive. It's not risk capital, right? So that is what India was seriously lacking till 5 years back. 2018, I think, is when the first IDEX, the India Defense Excellence something.
And the BIRAX and the DST,
in space, which is for space tech. Last 5 years, $100 million to $200 million. So we are 1/20th of the numbers that US has. So I think we need to first and foremost focus on that. Number two is the risk capital, right? And that's where the patient capital comes in. So the good news is, the bad news is that deep tech startups take 4 to 5.
4 to 5 to see revenue.
Yeah, so the successful startups, Swiggy, which just did IPO, was 10 years. 2014 they started, 2024 they've done IPO. So a good startup takes 10 years. A good deep tech startup takes 14 to 15 years, right? Now the good news is that the research has found that the deep tech funds give 5% more IRR, internal return of, on the revenue. So it's a 5% higher return that you get. So you are locking in for more, but you're getting higher return. And that is what is causing more and more people, more and more to shift to the deep tech patient capital. If you look at last 5 years, in US, the amount invested in deep tech has gone from 10% to 20%. So I actually don't worry about the deep tech capital and the patient capital, because the returns are justifying. Unlike China, which mandated. One day they said 2021, late 21, no Ant Financial IPO. Now we need to focus on deep tech. I think there's a monetary reason to do that. We don't need that top-down diktat. We can actually, it will naturally move there. 5 more years, I think India will be all set in that front. But I think we need to worry more about the revenue capital. That is where there are practical problems on the ground. money gets promised but does not get released. Right?
Oh.
And I think those are I think every faculty member here knows that, So what you get grant, but how much you have to run around to get it. I think we need to solve that. That's a huge time sink.
Just to see if you all are awake, we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. We spoke about human capital. We spoke about incubator or network capital. And very briefly, we spoke about the financial capital. Sir, you have a question?
Smithy. So if people begin situations where, the return on investment, how returns on interest rate impacts are quite high. The return on investment in stock exchange is very high. So investors that we look at in terms of when we find investing is that big as compared to other options they had. While in US and Japan, for example, you have zero interest rates. So for them, right, investment in startups and is emerging technology a very legit option. Or what do you recommend for startups who are in technology sector, deep tech sector, for them getting investment in India as compared to US? What's your opinion about that?
We're looking at you since you spoke last.
Okay. Okay. So I actually there are two parts to that question. Number one, should deep tech startups raise capital from Indian VCs or non-Indian VCs? I think by definition, US VC also, if he operates in India, has to, follow the same rules. So in some sense, it actually doesn't matter. So if you look at, one of the successful space tech startups called Pixel, right, which has launched these micro satellites and it has the best hyperspectral imaging technology in the world. It actually first got the money from a US angel investor, because that person was in the same space, so understood and was willing to put in money. So I think my comment to that is, in deep tech, if you really have a really good technology, money is available. It will, you have to work a little hard, but it is available. The second part of that question, I don't know if it was meant or not. It could be that as people who have excess wealth, should they be investing in startups or not? I think that's a very different question. If you want me to answer, I can, but maybe that's not the intent of this. But yeah.
We'll take one more. Any student here who wants to? Go ahead. Whoever has the mic, go ahead.
Hello, panel. Thank you for such an insightful discussion. My name is Siddharth Chandra. I'm the CEO of SPTBI. It's a technology business incubator in India, in Mumbai. It's based out of Bharati Vidya Bhavans. My question to you is, so I have a journey which I've spent around close to 10 years in the US startup ecosystem, building in the space of AI and ML. And I came back more recently, joined education as a faculty in my college, and have been teaching there, and now I'm part of the ecosystem and the incubation ecosystem. I want to understand as to how that bridge that you talk about between academia, between the faculties and between the entrepreneurs, how can that be bridged? People talk about people coming from the industry. They are doing a lot, which is, let's say, taking up courses or possibly doing some kind of offering seminars. But I have not seen the flow going the other way around. How about the professors or teachers? What are the systems or support systems in place which can allow, even people in the academia to move towards that side? Maybe I have a very, very small vision based on whatever I have seen in the current ecosystem, but I'm curious to know, how is it that is happening in India and also in other countries?
Okay, I'll probably take a shot and then you can add. So I think what you're saying, and I'm one of the beneficiaries, is what is called the professor of practice. So I worked for 25 years and then I joined here. Yeah, you're asking why is it that professors don't go and join industry at senior levels? I actually think what is more important than that specific question is how can we work together? And I've been hearing from across my panel, all three, Rakesh and Mac definitely mentioned about how we need to integrate better into getting problems or business problems, business centricity that Ajay spoke of, and work towards that. Whether it needs a professor to go and work or a PhD person to go and work is immaterial. To me, whether it's a faculty member or a student is not so important. I have heard in some other forum that the best form of translating research is a pair of feet. So someone who worked in a lab then goes and works at a company, and the pair of feet or the brains or whatever. So I'm honestly not so fussed about whether the faculty member goes or whether the researcher goes, or it's a postdoctoral fellow or a PhD student or a master's student. That's my limited understanding. But thank you, understand the question that you are asking. Yeah. I have 2 minutes, 22 seconds.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Otherwise, I do one thing. I'm a faculty member and I keep thinking that maybe there was a question a student wanted to answer and it didn't give them an opportunity. So is there something that you want to tell us? I'm actually going to say a couple of things or repeat that you have said. So when I asked you about entrepreneurial traits, one straight up answer, Mac, that we got from you was how can we shadow a successful entrepreneur, not even successful, an inspiring entrepreneur. You got a wonderful person to, can't beat that, but how do we? So that was my first action item. How do we get aspiring entrepreneurs to hang out with inspiring entrepreneurs? So that's one. So if you have something like this that you want to add from you, Rakesh, very clearly the learnability, which is, how few people put up their hands about going into a new space. And I'm wondering if today something like this were to happen, would the rules be, would it be reversed? I mean, new seems more interesting than current and comfortable for sure. So putting up hand and asking to do a new thing. Ajay, you spoke of user centricity, product centricity, and business centricity, and all of that we know. And as SINE, we definitely practice. But how do we do that more with, and so leaving you one last thought individually, if you have anything to add to how can we nation build with entrepreneurship, as broad as that.
I think I have just one last bit.
Sure.
Is that although I've been part of SINE industry board
yeah.
for about 5 years, and I've interacted with few startups, and it's been interesting because they've built up my own interest in my own company, because I like to think myself as a entrepreneur company, and I have taken enough risk in different assignments of mine. But I think I would like to understand in SINE, what's the vision of SINE?
Sure.
How are we benchmarked against the best incubators across the world? And because if we are clear about that, then I think the subsequent steps and the strategies can be. I'm just wearing my strategy.
No. The
so
question
I think
is clear.
I'm not clear on that. Although no one sent me any.
That's okay. But the question is clear. The action item is clear.
So I think that's the action item to my mind.
Sure.
And last bit is that Y Combinator I see is that every 2 years, they change the number of companies working in a particular area. So that's what
Change the mix.
A mix of the companies.
Okay.
So today I see that very large number of 80% companies are in AI space and 20 are in others. And 2 years back in 2022,
It was healthcare.
it was reverse. Only 20%. So SINE can have definitely a different one because of India's unique needs, but we need to be clear about what's our vision and strategy. Thank you.
Any comment, Mac? And
Okay, so regarding inspiring entrepreneurship, I think so. Life is a journey. I think we have to enjoy as much as possible our life. Then to achieve it, I think entrepreneurship is necessary. You have to challenge. Otherwise, so boring. I mean, our life.
thank
So
you.
yeah,
Thank you.
let's do it.
Ajay, last
I'll pick on that and I'll take it to the. So I completely agree. Entrepreneurship actually is the it's a necessity. It's not an option. And the reason I say that is that actually in India we often complain that only 0.7% of GDP is invested in R&D, right? And we also say that our government is not investing more; they should be doing it. But if you look at global thing, out of the 0.7%, 65% of that is actually paid by government, right? So only 35% of that is from the private sector, right? But globally the numbers are reverse. 80% comes from private sector and 20% from government. So I think the imperative is that we need to make sure that the private sector is putting more money in R&D. Right? The last point I want to mention is, which actually really got me really into deep tech startups and the need to work with, is that if you look at US data, 84% or 84% of the R&D spends in US are from the startups which were VC backed. So I think it's not, it's not the Dow Jones, Dow Chemicals and those old GMs and GEs which are investing money. It is the new ones which got started recently. So starting deep tech startups is actually will help us increase the R&D spends, which help us get the more jobs in the market, which help us increase the, with the broad basing or the mainstreaming of the mass entrepreneurship as China called it in 2010, 2015. I think that's what we need. So I think those are the necessities. I think we'll get there.
Thank you. And wonderful to have had Mac and Ajay and Rakesh. Thank you, and I hope I didn't run too late.
Not at all. Thank you so much for that. I would like to welcome on stage Ms. Jayashree Nayak, please, to present our panelists with a small token of appreciation. And I think it was so well said. I guess that not doing anything is the biggest risk. So one needs to have faith in oneself and go out there and live your dreams. Thank you so very much to our panelists for giving us those insightful perspectives.